Was making close to $3 million a year in straight commission.
I'm here today with Jeremy Miner. You started kind of as a ordinary, boring sales nerd who asked simple but tactical, basic questions, and now you became one of the top sales earners in the world.
You will fail for the simple reason you don't learn the right skills necessary to succeed. If you come across, like I said, too excited, you're way like an enthusiastic salesperson right now. I don't mean not be excited about what you sell, but keep that internal. If you come across needy, and you don't know the right questions, you don't know how to use your tone, it triggers their brain to go into what's called fight or flight mode.
In a moment, I'll play a cringeworthy sales call.
Oh boy.
And you can kind of coach me and everyone at home live. But before we get there,
you're listening to the Real Business Connections Network. Real Business Connections Network. Powered by Balbert Marketing, LLC. Subscribe now and check us out at realbusinessconnections.com. Enjoy the show.
welcome everyone once again to Learn, Speak, Teach on the Real Business Connections Network. I'm here today with Jeremy Miner. Jeremy, what's going on, man?
Hey, Ben, thanks for having me on the show. It's an honor. What would you like to discuss today? Should we have some fun?
We're going to have some fun. I think so. We're going to talk sales.
Sure.
And if someone isn't directly in, we're all in sales, correct?
Well, I mean, the rumor has it that, you know, everyone really is in sales. Like even if you don't make a commission off selling something, you're still out in the world every day trying to persuade, you're trying to influence, you're trying to convince. We call that you're trying to move others. That's a term called non-sales selling. So like if you're a business owner and you're trying to, get your team to follow the vision of where you want to take your company, well, I hate to tell you, you are trying to persuade, you're trying to influence, you're trying to move others, right? I could go on and on and on. If you're an attorney who's trying to convince the judge that your client's innocent, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence. If you're a politician trying to get people to vote for you, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence. If you're a contractor who is trying to get more clients, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence, you're trying to move others. I mean, in our day and age, everybody's doing that every single day, whether you get paid for it or not. You're in the business of persuasion and moving others to your way of thinking, for sure.
And you're pretty good at this, Jeremy. I'm a client of Jeremy's, so this is the shortest version bio. Tell me what I'm missing. But you started kind of as a ordinary, boring sales nerd who asked simple but tactical, basic questions, and now you became one of the top sales earners in the world, right? I mean, how much were you making?
Supposedly, yes.
How much were you making, Jeremy?
Well, at the height of my career, I was making close to $3 million a year in straight commission. So that was either as a W-2 rep or a 1099 rep. A lot with a couple of companies, I negotiated just for tax purposes to bring me on at 1099, whereas they pretty much only did W-2. But I learned my mistake from the first two industries I sold in, where I literally, like the second industry, I got up to almost $2 million a year in commissions, and it was like 45% of it was like gone from freaking the federal and state taxes. I'm like, this really sucks. And so I figured out in the last two industries, like, hey, I can negotiate 1099 and I can write off more stuff. I get a little bit more leeway. Still paid a lot in taxes, but 45, 50%, if I could get that to half of, I could pay 25, 30%, that's way better than 50 for sure. So yes, did fairly well, as some would say, and eventually got some ranking by the in Direct Selling Association. I was ranked number, I think, 44 or 45. Can't remember, one of those in the world. Highest paid salesperson in any industry selling anything. So there you go. Retired back in 2017, took some time off. And about a year later, late 2018, started what is now known as Seventh Level. And here we are.
In Seventh Level, you're pioneering the new model of selling. You quite literally co-wrote the book on it, right? And
I did.
Now
right here. Yeah.
You went from one of the biggest salespeople to one of the biggest sales training companies, correct?
Yeah, we have. We were, and I know I don't want this show to be about me because nobody cares about me on here. They're like, who's this dude in the, the green shirt here today that I wore, or whatever. But yeah, so selling Power Magazine, which is it's an international magazine. It's considered the largest magazine for sales training. And most of the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, Fortune 100 companies literally take sales leadership, sales management advice from this publication. So every year they come out, so they're a big deal in that space, sales training space. So every year they come out with a new ranking of the top 20 sales training companies in the entire world. We're not talking about the US, we're talking about any country in the entire world. And they base it off two factors. They base it off your company revenue. So you have to send in your financials. They have to be proven. It's not something you can, here's some money, rank us, like some features are. So you have to prove with your financials, and you have to prove it with client results. So you send in testimonials, and they quite literally have people that call companies to see like, hey, did you really post this? Did you really get this type of result? And then they rank the top 20 companies from company revenue for the year, client results. And in 2020, we are ranked in the top 20 sales training companies in the entire world. The cool thing, I didn't think we would make that. Realistically, we've only been in business less than, you're talking like 4 years or so. Mm-hmm. And I know that because I've read that magazine when I was in corporate America, when I made corporate sales positions. And I know how like sales training companies that are in there have been around for decades. Like the companies that were on that list, there was no other company on that list who had not been in business at least 20 years that also made that list. We've only been in business for 4. And most of those companies, there was one company that started in 1969, and they've been on that list for like 20 years, but you're talking 51 years, right? So I'm like, maybe in 10 or 15 years, we'll be fortunate to make this list. I was quite shocked when we turned in the financials and our testimonials. I knew we'd make it on our testimonials because we have like 18,000 plus of those. We have more than most companies have been around 30 or 40 years. But I was like, our financials are really big, especially for only 4 years in business. But I don't know if they're going to be big enough to be in the top 20. But we ended up being in the top 20. And the founder of the magazine actually had me on his podcast and said because they don't rank like who's won or who's 18, it's just top 20. But he said we were actually in the top 9.
Top 9
revenue. So I was actually quite surprised for that. So that's a good thing. And that's really to our team. We have 150 some team members, employees now. 4 years ago, there was 2, me and my assistant who's still with the company. And so you can grow really fast based on, if your training actually gets your clients results. And that ranking really has nothing to do with us. Has a lot to do with our methodology, NEPQ, but it has to do with our client results and increasing their sales in all sectors. We're in 158 different industries now. So that's the exciting part for us.
Well, congratulations.
I got to stop bragging about myself, though.
You said this a moment before this.
I feel weird.
First, the podcast is about you because you're my guest, but it's not just about Jeremy. It's about the results he gives his clients like myself. And that's why in a moment, I'll play a cringeworthy sales call.
Oh, boy.
And you can kind of coach me and everyone at home live. But before we get there, you mentioned NEPQ.
Yeah.
What is NEPQ and what led you to discovering this system that you created?
I mean, it just kind of happened by mistake. I wasn't born out of my mother's womb saying like, oh, one day I want to start a sales training company. And before that, I'm going to be a salesperson. Like nobody's born thinking that way. It just kind of happened. So I'll just give you a 1 minute overview if you want. I got into sales about 22 years ago. Burned out college student. I was 21 at the time, 22. And I got my first job selling home security systems door to door. Now, typically when you sell door to door, not all, but most companies will basically give you a script. They'll give you a couple of books by the sales gurus, and they'll basically drive you out in a van. Most of the time, kick you out of the van because you're scared to death because it's all new. You're a young kid. And basically they're like, hey, go make some sales. It's going to be easy. We'll pick you up after dark. Right. And so I still remember my sales manager. His name was Xane, blonde, curly, surfer hair, hey, it's going to be easy, man. Like, just go show them that you believe in the product, show them how excited you are about it, and they're going to be excited. Like, show your enthusiasm, Jeremy. And I'm like, that makes sense. If I'm excited, if I believe in it, and I show them how excited I am, then somehow they're magically going to be excited too. I mean, what did I know? I was 21. So I started knocking on the doors. Still remember the first door, the amazement in the prospect's face. I still remember the lady's face, like, what the hell, who is on my doorstep? I still remember it to this day, but I was really excited, talking about my features and benefits and how we were the number one this, and we had the best product, and we were going to do all these great things, and we had the best price points. And I noticed from the very first door, what did start happening? I got all these objections. We don't need it. We can't afford it. Your price is too high. I need to do more research. I need to keep looking around. I need to talk with my spouse. I need to think it over. Can you call me back in a week, a month, a year later? Who on here listening to us has lost deals from any one of those objections, right? We all have. And so I got about 7 to 8 weeks in with all that rejection, barely making any sales. And as you know, Ben, when you're straight commission, when you make 0 sales, that also means you make $0. So you make more money minimum wage.
I was making this sales call. I was making about 20,000 per year before commission. Not enough to feed my family.
Not especially with inflation, especially in New York where you live, right? And so basically, after about 7 to 8 weeks of that nonstop rejection, I actually still remember this. I was telling this to a keynote I did last week in Vegas at WealthCon. I remember sitting on a curb. It was like a Friday evening. It was about 8 weeks in. I'd barely made any sales. Now, that day, I'd made 0 sales. I'd worked 12 hours. That week, I'd made 0 sales. I'd worked 60 plus hours. 0 sales, $0. Okay, I remember the sweat rolling down, like hot, humid summer, legs like Jell-O. If you've ever sold door to door, your legs are like Jell-O at the end of the day. And I thought to myself, maybe selling just wasn't for me, right? And then when my manager picked me up, I was the last one to be picked up. I remember he put in a Tony Robbins CD. And yes, 22 years ago, people listen to these weird round things called CDs for all of our young listeners. And Tony said something like this, and it changed my life. He said, you will fail for the simple reason you don't learn the right skills necessary to succeed. You will fail if you don't learn the right skills. Now, he went on to say, everybody is taught a certain level of skill when they start a job. But he said most people fail because they're not taught the right ones. There's a difference in skill level. And that was the first time in my young 21-year-old life that I thought like, oh, maybe there's a difference in sales skills. Maybe some skills in sales are far more effective than others. I just never thought, I thought selling was everybody just said the same thing, got the same result, right? And so I remember like, I'm going to have to learn a much higher skill than what I'm currently being taught, right? And so the same time while I was learning these skills from the sales gurus, the books they had given us, right, and the company, my major was behavioral science and human psychology, which I won't get into the scientific stuff and I don't bore everybody, but it's basically the study of the brain and how and why human beings make decisions. How do we make decisions? Why do we say no instead of say yes? Like what happens in our brain to actually make a decision? It's fascinating once you understand that. And as a salesperson, if you don't understand how the brain makes decisions, you just have a disadvantage over someone who does, right? And so my professors, one of them was by the name of Robert Cialdini. Have you ever read anything by Robert Cialdini?
Yeah, Persuasion.
Yeah, Persuasion. That was one of my professors. Okay. He's the head of behavioral science at ASU here in Arizona.
Smart guy. Legitimately wrote the books on persuasion and human behavior.
Yeah, for sure. So he's one of my professors. I was also taking online courses from a few professors at Yale on social dynamics, which is status and rank framing, if you've ever heard me talk about that. This is where I started to learn all that. And so my professors, they literally were saying the most persuasive way to communicate is here. The sales gurus and their programs and books I was taking, they were saying it was here. I mean, we're talking about like, this is exact opposite. And so I'm like, I'm so confused. I'm like, how do I take what I'm learning from behavioral science, the way the brain works, and wrap that into a sales process with the right questions, asked at the right time, with the right tone? How do I learn how to do that? Because that's not taught in behavioral science, right? You're going to get some theories and some data and some studies, which are important, but there's no sales process. Robert Cialdini in his book doesn't say, these are the questions you need to ask for this industry, and here's how you use your tone, and you're going to position your body language and your arms this way. That's not really taught, right? That's not what they do. And so how do I learn techniques that work with human behavior rather than work against it? So how do I get, this is how I started to learn. I started to learn how to get my prospects to do all the work. Whereas traditional selling teaches you what? That you have to do all the work, right? I started learning how to get my prospects to sell themselves, whereas traditional selling teaches you that you got to sell and convince yourself, right? Started to learn how to get them to overcome their own objections and prevent most of them from happening in their brain, whereas traditional selling, I hate to say this to everybody, triggers most of the objections you actually get. We might talk about the day when we review your call, okay? So I started learning how to get them to pull me in rather than traditional selling teaches you to push and pressure. And overnight, selling became like very, very easy and exceptionally profitable, right? I went from like dead last in the company to like 3 months later, the number one rep in the company. We're talking about like 400 reps. Within another year, became the number one rep in the entire industry in the United States over people who have been selling that same thing for 25 years. Then got into 3 other industries, B2B sales, B2C, and B2B again. And like you had mentioned, was making between 2 and 3 million a year in straight commissions. And the rest is kind of history, There you go. Okay, we got to stop bragging about myself. Let's give these folks some like really good stuff.
Let me first ask you, so human behavior understanding is a broad stroke. What were you doing that all the traditional sales gurus and salespeople weren't doing? You're saying people were selling themselves. They were attracted to you rather than you convincing and persuading them to work with you.
Well, let me ask you this. Who has the problems? The prospect or you, the salesperson?
We all have problems, but in this scenario, you're there to solve the problem.
They're the ones that have the problems, not you.
Yeah.
Now, who has the solution or the keys to solving those problems and getting them where they want to be? You do.
Yes.
Salesperson, you have to start acting that way. You can't come across needy or high pressure or too excited. Now, I don't mean be boring, but I mean be more in the middle, more like an expert is. So the way the brain works, like typically within the first 5, 7 to 12 seconds, if any sales interaction you're ever going to be in, I don't care if you sell B2B, B2C, door to door, business to government, it does not matter the industry. Your prospects psychologically, we can't even help it as a human being, subconsciously, they are picking up on your verbal and nonverbal cues based on your tonality and what you are saying and asking that triggers their brain to react in one of 2 ways. Now, that is a scary thing if you don't know what I mean. If you come across, like I said, too excited, okay, like you're like an enthusiastic salesperson right now. I don't mean not be excited about what you sell, but keep that internal. Don't show it like that. Once again, I don't mean be boring. There's a middle ground. So if you come across too excited, like most salespeople are viewed, right? If you come across needy, if you come across attached, that's the key word, anxiety, and you don't know the right questions, you don't know how to use your tone, it triggers their brain to go into what's called fight or flight mode. Does that make sense? A lot of people have heard of fight or flight mode, but they don't understand that you as a salesperson are actually the one triggering it in their mind. So if you're triggering it, once you learn how to eliminate the words that trigger it and change your tone that triggers it, then you just don't trigger it. You don't have prospects like emotionally shutting down, staying surface level. Oh, we're not interested. You just don't have that anymore. Okay. Now, once you learn what we train you with NEPQ, because we would train you how to come across more neutral, more unbiased. Like you're not quite sure you can help yet. You don't know enough details. And you're not saying that at the end of the call. You're saying that at the beginning till you build more trust and credibility. But when you come across that way, when you come across more calm, more collective, still assertive, just like I'm talking now, okay, and detached, that's the key word. You understand what questions asked. You understand how to use your tone. It causes the prospect's brain to become curious enough where they want to engage. They feel comfortable enough opening up to you because they feel like you're just trying to understand what's going on to see if there's something you can actually do for them. It's a whole different angle, and it quite literally causes the prospect to let their guard down. We call that disarming the prospect. You with me?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jeremy. I can't get this thought out of my head. I'm just imagining I show up to a physician's office and they go, "Oh my God, Ben, so excited. We just had a rep in. They gave us a new product I haven't even tried yet. I'm going to prescribe this to you and it's going to solve." I'd be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa." You haven't even got my MRI yet, doctor.
You don't know what's going on. Yeah. And now the thing with doctors is you already view them as more of an authority because of their title, right? Now, doctors in society at large are viewed at what? At a higher status than you. Even if you are a celebrity like Dwayne Johnson, he is going to view, if he goes into a heart doctor, he's going to view that doctor automatically at a higher status in the field of health than he is. But as salespeople, how does society view you in general? At a lowered status before you even say one word, correct? That's just how society views salespeople in general.
Because of the old practices, right? It's not all salespeople. It's just
because of the manipulation, the high pressure, pushy tactics that are still really taught with most organizations and with most sales training, or maybe disguised as or repackaged as consultative selling, where it's very surface level questions, logical based. They give you a logical based answer in return. And they never go below the surface because they stay guarded, which is a whole nother subject. So NEPQ, Neuro Emotional Persuasion Questions, is what I started learning from behavioral science, social dynamics, is really how to get the prospect to let their guard down and how to ask questions that actually cause the prospect and you to really understand what their real situation is. Most prospects don't understand that when you first start talking to them, right? They might know they have a problem, but they don't really understand the depth of the problem. They don't understand the consequences of what happens if they don't do anything about solving the problem, right? And so when you understand how to get them to emotionally open up, okay, what happens is when they emotionally open up and you help them relive the pain, you start to build a gap from where they are to where they want to be. Where they are, we call that their current state. Where they want to be, we call that their objective state. Now, what is the gap in between? The gap is only determined by you, the salesperson, by the questions you ask and how you ask them with your tone that causes them to trust you enough to open up. And as they tell you what's really going on, more importantly, who are they telling? Themselves. And when they start to tell themselves, they start to persuade themselves that they want to change. Okay. And when they start to persuade themselves that they want to change, that builds massive urgency for them to follow through and do that and to view you more as the expert, more as the trusted authority, because they feel that you understand their unique situation more than anyone else. So if they feel like you understand their unique situation the most, they will pay you more because they feel like because you understand their situation, that you can get them the best result. So price or cost doesn't really come up because you get them to focus on results-based thinking over price or cost-based thinking. That's a whole nother training we could do.
And the best part is once you deliver that result for them, they do get that financial or even emotional gain that you're providing, but you can't help them unless they make a decision to buy in, correct?
Yeah, you're not a problem solver until after they purchase what you're offering. Like I love books that talk about, hey, you got to be a great problem solver. The problem is, I'm just being real. Mm-hmm. If they don't buy from you, how can you be a problem solver? See, problem solving happens after the transaction, after the thing you sell is installed, or after the service is completed, or whatever you sell. That's when you solve problems. If you want to make a lot more sales, you got to learn how to become far better at what's called problem finder, how to ask the right questions at the right time. Like I said, I always say the right tone because your tone is how the prospect interprets the intention behind the question you're asking. Okay. So there's certain questions. If I asked, like, give me a question that, maybe you or somebody on your sales team for your marketing agency might ask a potential customer to find out about their situation about marketing? Like, what's a question you might use? And I'll show you how to reshape the tone.
Yeah, the generic version would be, do you have as many inbound leads as you would like?
Okay, perfect. Because I might ask first, if I'm selling what you do, because we train a lot of marketing agencies that crush it. And I'm sure, I know you're in one of our programs, 2.0, NEPQ 2.0. Is I might say, so walk me through, what do you guys do now to generate new leads and clients, just so I understand? Now I'm asking that in more of a curious tone, right? So my prospect interprets that I'm genuinely curious, and so they start to open up. There's other questions that I need to ask that are in a more confused tone. Now, when I say this if somebody hears me on a reel for 60 seconds and I'm talking about a confused tone and they don't understand the background, they're like, that's stupid. They're not going to look at you. They're going to look at you as an idiot if you sound confused. Now, I don't mean going through a presentation and be like, oh, I don't know what to do. A confused tone, like if you say something and, give me an example, like if you say something like, oh, I've had a lot of tension, or, I'm feeling a lot of pressure because of XYZ problem. I want to ask a clarifying question in a confused tone, because when I ask in a confused tone, that confused tone interprets to you that you need to clarify better what you meant by what you said, which causes you to start reliving that pain more. But if I didn't ask it in a confused tone, you wouldn't interpret that I was confused and you need to clarify. So if you said, I'm feeling a lot of pressure by XYZ problem, I'd be like, oh, how do you mean by pressure? See, that's a confused tone. And you're like, well, what I mean by that is, and then you start to tell yourself what you mean by that. You relive the pain. That's what I mean by a confused tone.
Well, and Jeremy, so is it fair to assume that you don't know exactly what they're going through, and it might be helpful if you asked?
Even if you do, you want them to relive that pain. And a lot of times, like when I do, training events or like a keynote or workshop, somebody will come up to me after, a few people here and there, most get it. But if you're like, I don't feel comfortable with asking some questions because I don't feel comfortable with my prospects telling me their pain. And I'm like, well, unfortunately, you're actually hurting them by not letting them tell you their pain. Because what's the biggest emotional driver in a human being that causes them to want to change? It's pain or the fear of future pain. Like if you're selling like a life insurance policy, fear of future pain, right? So if you can't help them relive pain or start to feel future pain, they don't feel any urgency to want to change. And if they don't feel any urgency to want to change, there is no sale. And unfortunately for them, they stay in the status quo, the problems stay the same, and nothing ever changes. So you're hurting them if you can't help them relive that pain. Pain is good because it always drives change in a human being. If everybody you start to think of it that way, like, oh, so it's good for them to feel pain or relive pain. Because you always hear in the books, no pain, no sale. But then nobody trains you how to get the prospect to want to open up emotionally, because just because you have good questions doesn't mean the prospect is just going to be like, let me tell you all about my pain, right? Unless they're a lay down. I'm talking like, we're not going to train you how to sell to the 5% lay downs. Like my good friend Brian Tracy says, every blind squirrel eventually finds a nut. We're training you how to sell to the other 95% of your prospects that are more neutral, that really don't know they have pain, or maybe they don't really know they have a problem, or maybe they don't even think they have a problem and everything's perfect. We show you. That's how I got from the industries I sold in. If I averaged the average rep in those industries, what they were making per month was less than $5,000 a month. How was I making 200,000 plus a month in the same industry, talking to the same type of prospects? How's that even possible? Because I knew how to communicate with the prospects, whereas they were just playing the numbers game. I was focused on the skills game, and I knew how to ask questions with my tone that would emotionally cause the prospect to trust me enough to open up. And one of the things you do to get a prospect to trust you enough is to admit that you might not be able to help them. And when you do that, you're going to notice the prospect lets their guard down, rather than be like, oh, I know we can help you right at the beginning of a call. Like, we've helped so many people. I'm so excited to be on here today. That's what every salesperson says. So they instantly view you, salesperson, lower status, trying to sell me something because they're used to every salesperson saying the exact same thing. They are not used to salespeople coming on. Let's say if you're like, oh, I'm so glad that you're on here with me, Jeremy. We really want to work with your firm. We've heard great things. You guys are a big firm and we feel like you might be right for us. Most salespeople would take the bait like, oh yeah, we're blah, 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 blah. What I'm going to do is like, well, just because we're a big firm and we've helped a lot of people in our industry doesn't necessarily mean that you would need us, for what you do. I'd have to find out more because there's a chance you might not even need us. Now, you know what the prospect does? Lets their guard down and they're like, oh, I hope he wants to work with me now. See, I'm changing the dynamic. I'm not negative, but I'm not super positive. I'm more neutral and unbiased. And then as I get into that conversation and build a gap from where they are to where they want to be, then I can be far more assumptive at that point, not in the very beginning.
Jeremy, we promised them a sales call where I embarrass myself. So we will move to that. So we can't give away your full, 20 hours of training in one short podcast. The
virtual training platform we do is like 45 hours.
45 hours virtual.
Plus all the group training.
Your Facebook
calls.
group probably has hundreds, if not thousands of hours to tell us.
Oh,
We're still going to go into a sales call, but where can someone go after this podcast?
Yeah, look, because I know we're talking a lot of theory here. We're not getting like industry specific. So if they want more industry specific training for the industry, because we train every industry now on the planet, according to Forbes, we train all sectors. And actually, no, there's two industries we don't train. If you sell underwater basket weaving, or if you sell salt mining, literally underwater basket weaving is actually an industry.
Yeah.
It's kind of a joke, but it's a industry.
What about
those are the two industries I'm training?
What about sidewalk chalk art? Jeremy, do you train sidewalk chalk?
We do, because that is considered sidewalk chart. It's actually considered that's in the landscaping home improvement industry, even though it's on the sidewalk, because there's sectors, right? And then there's different subsectors of each sector.
Curb appeal.
Home improvement is one of the top 10 industries we actually train in the world. Tens of thousands in that space. So let's review that call real quick. We got about 20 minutes.
No, you were going to tell us how we can get more.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So if they want to, have them go to one of our free Facebook groups. I think for your community that watches your show and listens to you, the best one for them, where they probably learn the most, would be salesrevolution.pro. So have them go to salesrevolution.pro. And right when they join, tell them, hey, I heard you on the podcast, and somebody on my team will message you back, and you can say, hey, I'm having this issue. And they'll even send you like maybe a few quick reels or some training that we won't even charge you for. We always do that with the new person for free that will help you sell more. And then if they want to get into more industry specific training for the industry, they can ask me on in the Facebook Messenger. Now, it probably will not be me messaging them back, be somebody on my team. We have like 19 people in there, and they'll message you back some options if that's what they want, for sure.
That's in the notes. You can
salesrevolution.pro. Yeah.
If someone wants to DM me, I'll make the introduction to a team member as well. I've never done this on a podcast before, Jeremy. I'm going to share my screen sound. And what your job is to do is to tell me when to pause.
What were you selling?
I was selling marketing.
Okay.
Without giving out, specific details.
Okay.
We were partnered with a very large institution.
Okay.
So we would call on behalf of this institution and sell these products, additional products. So they were already a member.
Is this an inbound lead or an outbound lead?
This is me calling a list of members of the institution, but trying to upsell all sorts of marketing products.
So they've already bought something from you.
They are a member of the organization, and now we're looking to upsell them with the works.
Okay, so what do they have already bought, or they just? I'm not understanding. They already bought something small, or
I'm speaking around it because I don't want to give it away. But it's similar to a chamber group or a home improvement group. They're part of an organization where they've bought into
Okay.
Um,
Would they even know who you are if you said I'm with XYZ organization? They'd be like, oh yeah, I know that
yes.
organization.
We
Okay.
would name drop it's bleeped, but we name drop it first thing out of our mouth just so people would understand why we're calling.
Okay.
But we were
It's more
calling.
considered, it's not a cold call. It's more considered an outbound lead because they would already know who the organization was, right?
But
Okay.
they don't know me from Paul, and they have no clue why I'm calling. But they
Okay.
do know the organization.
Yeah, it's a cold call kind of outbound because at least there's a shoe in because they kind of already know the organization. It's not like you're back in the day taking a name and number out of a phone book and randomly calling and they've never heard of you, don't know anything about the organization. A little bit different. Okay, got it. Let's go. We got 15, 20 minutes.
Quickest context ever. This is my first year in sales. I'm doing some lead generation. I was the first one in, last one out. My sales hunger was through the roof.
Yeah.
But you can tell me when you listen to this call if you think I was very successful or not. But this is embarrassing. We'll see where it takes us.
Oh my gosh. You're brave, man. Especially from your first year. You should have just like your best call.
Jeremy, we're one of the top 1% global podcasts. I have plenty of money. I'm doing great. This is in the past. This is 4 years ago. Let's listen to it though.
Perfect.
You can hear that, right?
Hi, Armando. It's calling. I just have a minute here. We can keep it simple. Do you got a sec? Very, very simply, Armando. They revamped their website in January.
You can't hear his end, but you can see my end.
Oh, I can't hear a response. That's a hard call to review if you can't hear the response of the prospect.
How am I doing so far?
Not bad. I probably, my tone would be a little bit different. Is this now? When I'm calling this, because it's kind of it's almost a cold call because they don't really know. They didn't put in their name and email and phone number and know somebody's calling. That's more of an outbound lead. So it's kind of a cold call, but you have a better in because they know your organization. So I want to start off with a confused tone because it's more of a pattern interrupt because salespeople that call right into it. Hey, Armando. Hey, yeah, my name's Ben. I'm with XYZ company. Hey, the reason why I called you was click because it sounds like a salesperson. So I want to start off more confused. Yeah, is this John? Yeah, John, it's Ben with you're one of our members in our organization, the XYZ organization. Yeah. They'll be like, oh yeah. I don't have. I've only got a few minutes. So then you're gonna have a status frame. I've only got a few minutes before my next appointment. So now they feel like their guard's down a little bit because they feel you're only going to take a few minutes of their time. So they don't feel like you're going to sell them something in 2 minutes. Now, don't say, do you have 2 minutes? Then they will feel like you're selling them because every salesperson does that on a cold call. You say, I only have a few minutes before my next appointment, but they have us reach out to our members for what? See, I don't know what you're reaching out for them.
So I only have a minute. Do you have a sec?
I only have 2 minutes before my next appointment.
Right.
And I don't know what he said in between, so it's hard for me to. I only have a few minutes before my next appointment, but the organization has us reach out to our membership to make sure what. See, I don't know what is the thing you're calling about? Like, what do you say there?
Yeah, we'll get into. I apologize.
Okay, let's go.
I've got a seal call that we can fill in the blanks.
Okay.
Presume he's not eating what I'm trying to sell, and then we can hear.
Yeah, because if I could hear him, it tells me how he's reacting, so it tells me how to help you change it. But it's all right. Let's keep going.
Did I come today unprepared, Jeremy?
I forgive you.
Set up proven programs online to help their businesses. Things with branding, reputation management. Really, we're looking to get you some exposure. Very, 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 very cool presentation.
So you're automatically going into your what?
Features and benefits.
Your solution. So automatically he's thinking what?
This person's trying to sell
This is a salesperson trying to sell me something. So what is he doing? His survival part of his brain is either at this point, because he knows you're trying to sell him something, he's either going into fight or flight mode. Now, fight mode is he's like, oh, I'm not interested, or, oh, I don't have time. Call me back later. And then he never answers the phone. Or he throws out an objection. Oh, I don't need that. I'm good with branding. That's fight mode. Flight mode is more, he just kind of keeps listening. And when you start to ask questions, he's going to give you vague, generalized, surface level answers. And then at the end, he's like, hey, can you send me can you send me an email with more details? Or, I'm really kind of busy right now. I'm interested, but maybe call me back next week. And then he ghosts you, and then you start chasing him. So that's what's going on in his survival part of his brain. It's called the reptilian part of your brain right now, because that's just the way that we're wired. So anytime we feel like somebody's trying to sell us something, especially if we don't know them, even if we know them, we're automatically going right there and we're like, surface level or sales resistance, get rid of you. So one of the two things is about to happen.
And in NEPQ, I've introduced myself. I found that I do have the right person, Armando.
Yeah, so I'm going to start. Yeah, is this Armando? Yeah, Armando, it's Ben with the XYZ organization. You're one of our members, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, Ben. Oh yeah, how's it going? Just hanging out, being boring. What about you? Oh, I'm sure you're not bored, huh? Well, hey, I don't have much time. I just had a few minutes before my next appointment, but the organization has us reach out to all of you, since you guys are business owners, and ask you a few questions about what?
Your online marketing.
About kind of your branding and kind of what you're doing now, because they've got some things that they might be able to do for you. I'd have to know more. Sometimes they're able to help you. Sometimes your brand doesn't really need any help, but pretty much they're going to want to know. And then I might ask my first situation question. It just depends. Like I'd have to know more about what you're doing here, and I'd make that way better. But
I rattled it off, but branding, reputation management, lead generation, instead of just spitting it out, I need to figure out if they possibly have any interest on this.
Yeah. So they have us. So even of what I said there, which I would tweak way more if I looked at, but they have us reach out to you guys to see kind of what you're doing for your branding, for your business, because they have some options now where we help business owners do that so they can scale and make more revenue for the company. Now, a lot of times when we talk to members, a lot of them don't even need it. Like they're already crushing it in branding, but sometimes they do. And you might not even need it, but they'd have me ask a few questions. And then if you want, we can always set something up to look at it later. Like, for example, and then I'm going to go into my first situation. Notice how I'm a lot of times when we talk to members, they don't even need it. Now, why do I do that? That sounds counterproductive. Like, why would you say that, Jeremy?
You're disarming them.
My first job is to get them to let their guard down. Now, do I know we can help them? Yes. Does that prospect know you can help them in the first 20 seconds when he has no idea who you are? He has zero trust. You have zero credibility, and he's viewing you already at a lower status? No. So if we go right into our solution, 95% of the time, unless they're a lay down, like, oh my gosh, I have problems, right? Which most of them aren't. They're just going to they're just going to get rid of you or just play along and then never buy anything. You're going to be in chase mode, right? So if I can get them to let their guard down and emotionally open up, the way I do that is by saying, we might not be able to help you. Notice I'm not negative, but I'm not positive. I don't know enough yet, right?
You're neutral.
So I might not be, I'm more neutral. That causes them to let their guard down. Now, during that conversation, for my questioning ability and my tonality, you're going to build such a large gap from where he is in his business and branding and marketing to where he now sees that he could be, where he feels like, wow, they actually have something that can help me I need to take this seriously, and they emotionally open up. But if I can't get them to let their guard down the first 30 seconds, it's over.
It's over.
Yeah.
Is this unbearable, or should I click play?
One more time. We only got four or 5 more minutes.
When's a good time that I can call you? I can hear you're working or doing something. I'd love to hop online and show you how this works.
It's the best time I call. I'd love to show you how this works. What's going on in his mind?
His
salesperson. You see, you're focused. It wasn't your fault. You're focused on you. I'd love to show you how this works. Not, is there an appropriate time that we could maybe have a conversation to see if this would fit into what you're looking for? Would that help you if I took some time to do that with you? Notice how I'm changing the dynamic. Now, what I can do if it helps, because like I said, I've got to get to another appointment, is if you have your calendar handy, I can pull up mine. And if you'd like, notice I'm neutral. If you'd like, I can have you book a specific time with me. I'll have to look at and see what I've got in the next week. That way you don't have to chase me down and vice versa. Would that help you if I did that for you? Notice I'm getting them to do all that. Would that help you if I did that for you? Okay. I want them to feel like I'm doing them a favor by going over the branding in that next appointment. Now, that's going to work way better if I spent 5 to 7 minutes to build at least a bit of a gap to help them find at least a problem or an issue that they might not have known they had. That's going to cause them to actually want to book the next appointment and actually show up and not flake out. You know what I mean?
It's because you're high status.
Higher status. We raise our status instead of lowering our status by saying, I'd love to hop on with you. When's a good time? More assumptive. Now, I know you've probably changed the ballgame up since your first year, but yeah, there you go.
I didn't last long before I got hung up on, but
see, there you go. If I could have heard his tonality and what he said, I could have gave you a lot more, but that was good.
Great question. So I can't give you an exact price.
he's asking me what it costs and those kind of things. He's going straight into objection mode.
Yeah. So because you got him into price-based thinking.
It's
rather than
45 seconds in, and he already wants to know the price. Jeremy.
So what you do is like, well, I can't give you the exact cost. So now he's going to not trust you because he feels like you're hiding something, right? So you have to answer it. You can't just give him the price because you haven't built any gap. So you're dead there. So you have to answer it indirectly. So what you'd say is like, oh, yeah. We'll go through all those details for sure. Now, just so you know, it all depends on, what does it depend on? It all depends on what type of business you have now and kind of what your branding looks like, you know, like your marketing compared to maybe where you're wanting that to be, to kind of see what that gap looks like. And once I understand all those details, because we don't have like one service for one price, but once I understand all those details, I can go through all the different options we would have for our clients. Would that help you more if I did that? And now they're like, well, yeah, that makes sense because it all depends on this, and this. And once I understand that, then I can go through all the different options we have for our clients. Would that help you? People are not going to say, no, that would not help me. Now, if you did everything you did before that, like you did, and then you tried that, it's not going to be as effective as getting them to let their guard down if they ask you that. I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
So sprinkling a strategy into a broken method isn't going to fix the whole system.
It will help. It's like a Band-Aid. It's like a Band-Aid, but are you going to triple your sales? No, it's just a Band-Aid. You want to learn how to prevent him. You want to learn to prevent him from even asking you that quite a question, because that's a triggered response based on how you were taught to approach him that triggered him to ask about the price or cost before you even found out if he had any problems.
Should we go for another 30 seconds or cut it off before I
got to cut it off, brother. I apologize. I know.
What's wild, Jeremy, is we got 57 seconds in to a 2-minute and 45-second call.
Yeah.
And just imagine where I was and the amount of improvement I could have had. Every little microscopic movement was a little bit off the ball. I feel that way, at least. Does it seem that way?
Well, everything you do, like I said, even how your tonality comes across. So if I'm more neutral, I'm with you're one of our members, the organization XYZ. It was like, I remember now. Oh, yeah. And I don't have much time to talk. I just have a few minutes before my next appointment. But the organization, they have us reach out to you guys that actually have a business to kind of see maybe what your branding, kind of your marketing looks like, because they have a few options for that now. Now, just so you're aware, a lot of times when I talk to business owners, about their brand, they don't even need what we have. Like, they are already crushing it. But sometimes they do. I'm not saying you would, though. I'd have to know more. But for example, and then I'm right in. So I'm neutral. I'm saying a lot of times, I'm not saying every time, I'm not saying a few times, say a lot of times, or, or I might even say sometimes. I'd probably say sometimes. Sometimes when I talk to business owners, they don't even need branding. Like, their branding is so good. Like, they are scaling it. They don't even need the organization's help. but then a lot of the times they do. And sometimes they get upset if we don't go over it with them. So they have us typically ask a few questions around the brand. And then if you feel like, hey, they might have something for me, we can always schedule down the road and kind of go through the details. Would you be opposed to having a conversation around that? Why would I say opposed rather than would you be open?
Well, I mean, I know in sales with yes ladders and it just seems aggressive. I mean, it's
So when I say
easier.
would you be opposed, it's easier for a
No,
prospect
no.
to say no
I'm not
than yes.
opposed to
Yeah,
possibly looking at
yeah.
your
See,
solution.
I said,
That
would
is,
you be opposed to possibly having a conversation? See, possibly is neutral.
of course. I mean, I'm an
Nobody's going to
open-minded.
say, yes, I'm opposed. They're going to be like, no, I'm not opposed. What questions do you have? That's
Okay,
exactly, no, I'm not opposed.
I'm an open-minded guy that wants to better
Yeah.
my business.
But
Why
if I
would I?
said, would you be open? A lot of people said, yeah, I'd be open. But a lot of people be like, well, I don't have time. It's harder for them to say yes in the beginning because you haven't built trust or credibility. Way easier for them to say no. But the way you do that, are you opposed to possibly having a conversation around that? No, I'm not opposed to doing that. What do you have in mind? See, it's easier for them to say no. Now that no leads to an eventual yes. See, sales trainers always say you got to get them to say yes 17 times in the conversation. If you get them yes to say 7 times, there's a 73% more chance of them buying. There literally is no data that shows that. That came from a sales trainer who wrote that in a book in the 1940s from his own internal company doing a survey. And that, I'm telling you, quite literally, there's no proof or scientific data that shows that. And then sales trainers started copying and pasting that into their books, and there's zero evidence on that. In fact, I want to get them to say no because it actually gets them to open up and it leads to the yes. Rather than trying to manipulate them into saying yes from a question that they know is manipulative.
Jeremy, I said I'd get you out. I said I'd get you out the door. We're right at the edge here, so I'll let you go before I ask 50 more questions. Thanks for letting me play around and embarrass myself. For anyone at home that feels like they might be embarrassing themselves, you can possibly help them, right? Tell us once again how someone can go in and learn about their industry, because as you said, you train it.
Yeah, 158 different industries. According to Forbes, there's actually 163 industries now. They just came out. So every year they come out with, there's new industries that are added. There's other ones that, because of maybe COVID, like are eliminated. And then there's like 3 more that are, added because of COVID or something that happened, right? With AI, there's some different industries now that have popped up, but we're in every one of those except 2, only 2 industries in the world. We're not training in now. So if they want to go to salesrevolution.pro, probably the best place. We got about 90 some thousand salespeople and entrepreneurs in there. A lot of them are probably in their industry that they're listening or watching us. That's a good place to start. We go live in there 2 to 3 times a week, different Q&As, different trainings. We give them nibbles, little golden nuggets. Even on those, we get hundreds of testimonials a month saying like, even your free content, I'm making more sales. And I can't wait to actually get into your advanced training that clients pay for because it's 1,000 times more. And then if they want to go to Barnes & Noble, this is our new bestseller. This is a Barnes & Noble bestseller that you can pick up on the bookshelves there, any major bookstore. It's a Wall Street Journal bestseller and Amazon bestseller. It's only been out for about 4 months, I think, end of April, May. Yeah. And new model of selling, co-authored by my good friend, Jerry Acuff. He's the CEO of Delta Point. It's a large sales consulting firm on the East Coast. And me and Jerry give you a lot of tactical questions to ask in this book. So if you buy the book, I would only ask that you buy it from barnesandnoble.com or your Barnes & Noble bookstore, because we have a special deal with Barnes & Noble that the more people purchase this, the more they stock our shelves with this. Right now, we have a few of these in each store. We want to get it up to about 10 to 15 in each store, So don't buy it from Amazon. It'll cost you 50 cents more to buy it from Barnes & Noble. If you need a GoFundMe page, ask me and Ben. We will get you a GoFundMe page so you can pull together the $17 to get the book so you can sell more. So just ask us if you need the GoFundMe page.
They don't waste your time. Just message me and I'll buy it for you. I'll invest the $20 in your future.
It's only 17, so they can sell more.
First 5 persons are on me. The next number 60 is the GoFundMe, but I'll. They
got to buy the $17 book so they can sell more. Oh my gosh, Jeremy, you're asking a lot.
All right, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me on.
Get out of here until we do it again. I appreciate you, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, man. It's a pleasure. A lot of fun. Next time I review call, let me hear what they say. I'll give you way better because it'll tell me what's going on in their brain. Right now, it's guessing.
It's important to be prepared, huh?
There you go, brother. Thanks for having me on.